The New York Mets fleeced the MLB with four great acquisitions at the trade deadline for a pretty solid price, all things considered, and fans are praising David Stearns for going big when he needed to bolster this roster here in 2025 to go win it all. But fans have one caveat, which we'll dive into only here on Mets Digest. I'm your host today, Mike Duda. We're going to talk the trade deadline from the Met perspective and with my opinion, but first, we got to talk about some subscribers, and that being the fact that 69.9% of you that watch these videos aren't one. So please do me a favor, do us a favor here at Mets Digest, and hit that free subscribe button. That way we can bring content to you about the amazing. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right in. And we're actually going to start with some must-knows about Cedric Mullins, because my goal was just to get content out as quick as possible when the Mets actually traded for Mullins. So go ahead and check out the video that I just posted earlier, breaking Mets make massive trade. This is insane. If you want to hear about the Cedric Mullins trade, when I talked about it, when I originally spoke about it, it was more about the return package, how the other prospects are, and just an overall sense of who Cedric Mullins is. There's a couple of things that are important that I realized after the fact and that I saw going on X, starting off with Anthony DiComo, who shouts out the Mets scouting staff. He says, last note on Mullins' deal, it's a huge credit to the Mets amateur scouting staff. Nunez was 22 years old, a busted prospect when the Mets inked him. Gomez signed late out of Venezuela at age 19. Usually see international prospects sign at 17 or 16. Marsh was an undrafted free agent. The Mets found them, developed them, and turned them into Mullins. Now, DiComo, of course, he is an author. He's a well-established author and reporter. He put this perfectly, the way that he described it. The Mets, they went out, they inked undrafted free agents, they got guys really late in rounds, and it worked out. They got international free agents, molded them because of the scouting staff, molded them through the developmental staff, and now flipped all three of them for Cedric Mullins. Like I said in the initial video when I reacted to the trade, they didn't really give up too much, all things considering. It wasn't like they spent top 5 round picks on them. The earliest pick was a 19th round selection, and that wasn't even from the Mets. So overall, great job. I get it. Nunez was the 14th prospect in the Mets system, now 22 over in Baltimore. Gomez was the 30th with the Mets, not ranked in Baltimore, and Marsh was not ranked on both sides. I understand that, but all things considering, talking through Anthony DiComo's words, the Mets did a great job at getting what were nobodies when they originally found them, developed them correctly, and now flipped them all for Cedric Mullins. And it almost seems as if they didn't lose anything to go get Cedric Mullins. So great job by the scouting staff. Great job on the developmental side of things. DiComo puts this perfectly. Next thing I want to mention is actually from Jim Palmer, of course, the Hall of Famer and legendary Baltimore Orioles player. He says, Good thing you went and got Cedric Mullins. I'm sorry to see him go. He goes from last to first, and the Mets get him coming off his best week defensively, offensively in 2025. Ramon Urias going to the Astros, same story, last to first. Ramon and Cedric, huge parts of the 101 and 91 win seasons in 2023 and 24. Play well, stay healthy. Yeah, one thing that I didn't mention about Cedric Mullins, he has mashed against lefties this year, what the Mets desperately need. The Mets have not hit left-handed pitching well this year. Mullins is great at that. Just like Luis Robert was, I think Mullins is even better. A 298, 390, 476 / good for a 866 OPS against the left-handers. He is great against lefties. We'll take a look quickly at his advanced metrics because I know we didn't do that. As you can see from the range, a really solid outfielder. Doesn't have the best arm, but he can run. He's got a good glove. He fields well, and his bat is really not terrible. I know the advanced metrics don't say it, but when you look at the statistics, which we went over in that original trade video, they're pretty solid overall. He is a good player, and the last thing I want to talk about, because they weren't out, because it was such breaking news, are the trade grades. This is from Sports Illustrated. They gave the Mets an A-, the Orioles a B-. Fansided was the only one that went against the Mets, giving the Mets a B- and the O's a B. USA Today had a B+ on both sides, and even ESPN, who we know is super biased against the Mets and against New York, and they really don't like us, they even said that the Mets won this trade. So overall, great deal with Cedric Mullins, and awesome deals as well with Gregory Soto, Tyler Rogers, and Ryan Helsley. Overall, David Stearns did incredible this this trade deadline, which is exactly what I want to talk about now. Here is an overlook of the additions and subtractions. And if you notice and you look through it, we'll talk about this later, the highest prospect the Mets gave up was number 8 overall. They did not touch their top 7 prospects. So, you get Gregory Soto, a solid left-handed option out of the bullpen. Your 2 setup man now in Tyler Rogers, and a star closer in Ryan Helsley, who moves to the setup man slot because Edwin Diaz is just so great, and Cedric Mullins, who fills a lot of holes, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. For overall, the 19th prospect in your system, Jose Butto, 10th, 12th, 8th, 14th again, 30th, and a couple of non-ranked prospects. All things considered, the Mets did a really, really good job with this. I know the subtractions list is a lot longer than the additions list, but especially given how relievers and starting pitching was so limited on this trade deadline, and you really needed to give up a ton in order to go get stuff, this was absolutely great. David Stearns did a really, really wonderful job. None of these names are massive. Drew Gilbert's a solid enough name, but even him, you have Jet Williams, who they're trying to morph into an outfielder. You have Juan Soto for 14 more seasons after this. Brandon Nimmo won't be a free agent until 2031. So where are you putting these guys? You have Drew Gilbert. He kind of was someone that you had to let go because Jet Williams is going to play the outfield, and you have such a jam up moving forward in your infield. So great move by Stearns there. And there's just not enough room for all of these prospects. Yes, he got rid of a lot of pitching prospects, but pitching is something that you can continue to develop. And in the top 5 specifically, the Mets have a lot of pitching. They have Jonah Tong, who's going to be incredible. They have Brandon Sproat. They have Nolan McLean, who hopefully will be 3 pieces and 3 key pieces of the rotation moving forward. You also have David Peterson, who's not super old. Kodai Senga as well should be part of this team for a little while away. Sean Manaea has another 2 years on his contract. So overall, I know you gave up a lot of prospects, but you just simply didn't have room for these guys. So David Stearns did a good job. He didn't get rid of any of the key prospects, and he did a good job getting rid of guys that really were going to struggle to find the field in the first place and struggle to get playing time. So remember when I was talking about how Cedric Mullins fits in so well in the lineup? Well, look at these pitching additions when it comes to the bullpen. Names that are highlighted are names that are no longer a part of this pitching staff. Either they were traded away or sent down. For Huasco Brazaman and Jose Castillo, it was sent down / optioned, and Jose Butto was, of course, traded and part of that original deal in Tyler Rogers. Now, as for the rest, I put in blue Brooks Raley and Reed Garrett because when you look at the new revamped bullpen, they went from setup men, which is a lot harder of a role. You have a more difficult time. You have more pressure situations as a setup man pitching in the 7th or 8th inning as compared to just a middle reliever that might take the 5th inning or part of the 6th inning, get a couple of outs here and there. And overall, when you just look at the names, look at how much it's bolstered. You were relying heavily on Ryan Stanek and Reed Garrett. Now they're just names that are in the middle of your bullpen. Now they're your back-end options alongside Rico Garcia, and Rico Garcia has been pretty solid for the Mets overall. They are towards the back end in terms of guys that are needed. You can still go to Gregory Soto, Brooks Raley, Tyler Rogers, Ryan Helsley, and Edwin Diaz over these guys. It puts less pressure on the guys that had a lot of pressure originally in Garrett, who's eaten up a lot of innings. He's ate up a ton of innings this year. Same with Stanek. It's less pressure. They'll end up pitching probably less, which is good because you let your big dogs, you let your relievers do their job. David Stearns did a perfect job addressing the bullpen over here in the 2025 trade deadline. I have no complaints on that front whatsoever. And as for the lineup, now this was the lineup that was originally the case on Monday night against the San Diego Padres. This is the lineup that they were rolling on a daily basis. Now, not much has changed in terms of the lineup itself. It's only one new guy that you slot in there in Cedric Mullins. The Mets only traded for one position player, and that was Mullins. But take a look. I'm going to highlight any change that was made in the lineup with Cedric Mullins being in blue. So take a look at the lineup now. Look at how much changes. I know your top 4 doesn't change, but Jeff McNeil now can go back to his natural position at second base. Cedric Mullins slots in. He'll probably hit around the 6th mark. You can even put him in the leadoff spot and put Brandon Nimmo at the 5. And given the way Brandon Nimmo has started to develop more into a power bat as opposed to someone that gets on base all the time, that's probably even a better move if Mullins is someone that develops into a player that gets on base a lot. You put Mullins in the leadoff spot. Nimmo goes down to the 5. Mark Vientos, Brett Beatty, and Francisco Alvarez can all go down a spot. Brett Beatty can return from second base, what he was learning this year in spring training, in the 2025 spring training, back to his natural position at third base. Ronnie Mauricio isn't even in this lineup, so you can work Mauricio in at the DH or third base, and you can move Beatty back to second on some nights, depending on lefty-righty matchups, even depending on who you're facing in terms of the pitcher and the opposing team. So overall, I know it's just one name, but look at how much different this lineup looks. You move guys around on the defensive front and even in the lineup. Cedric Mullins was a key piece that the Mets addressed. And speaking of addressing, did we actually address our needs? Yes. Only with the exception of starting pitching, which, keep in mind, after the Mets went out and got Cedric Mullins, it was basically, all right, they're done. Anthony Tacoma was saying it, as well as Andy Martino. They were like, hey, don't expect any more trades from the Mets. Well, they were actually interested down to when Merrill Kelly went to the Texas Rangers. They really wanted to pick up Kelly, and if they did, that's that starting pitcher need. We'll get to my official grade of the 2025 trade deadline in just a bit. It knocked them down by about a plus. It went from a plus to just a regular grade because they didn't get a starting pitcher. But, I mean, if they did, they would have the perfect grade. Still, overall, they did a great job. I know Cedric Mullins fills both a bat and center field, and, his bat's not incredible. His bat's only solid. But the bullpen, you went from a bullpen that's about here, maybe 15th to 20th in all of Major League Baseball, all the way to the top. You now have an argument that the Mets have the best bullpen in all of Major League Baseball. And the great thing is, look, they kept their major league players. I did put Paul Blackburn here because he was rumored to be traded and never ended up getting traded. But your 4 young outfielders, Luis Angel Acuna, Brett Beatty, Ronnie Mauricio, Mark Vientos, they all stayed. Jeff McNeil was rumored to potentially be on his way out. He stays in Flushing. And look at the top 7 prospects in our system. That is the same top 7 that the New York Mets had coming into the trade deadline. They didn't touch Jet Williams, Jonah Tong, Nolan McLean, Carson Bench, Brandon Sproat, Jacob Reimer, who has found his way up in the prospect rankings. Ryan Clifford as well also stays here in Flushing. So overall, a wonderful job from David Stearns at the 2025 trade deadline. Again, I put them at an A, not an A+, solely because they didn't get an extra arm. I think another arm would help them down the stretch in the rotation. Maybe that allows Clay Holmes to go back to the bullpen, who has struggled of late as a starting pitcher. And maybe you don't have Frankie Montas in there all the time. But regardless, overall, they did a wonderful job with the trade deadline. If I were to give them a percentage, it would be 1 percentage point lower than whatever an A+ would be. So maybe a 95%. They did a great job overall. David Stearns really, really did well. In fact, MLB Network and other sources were actually talking about the Mets potentially having the best trade deadline. And you got teams like the San Diego Padres, the Texas Rangers, the Boston Red Sox, who almost seemed like they went out and got everyone. The Houston Astros had a very aggressive trade deadline. So overall, wonderful job from David Stearns. Go down there in the comment section. Let me know, do you agree? Do you think Stearns did absolutely incredible this trade deadline? Did we address all of our needs going into the playoffs in 2025 that we hopefully end up going and winning the World Series? Of course, focus on making the playoffs first, considering the Mets just got swept from the Padres, but all things considered, they probably will. So did the Mets address the needs to go all the way this year? Let me know if you agree. Let me know if you disagree. I think Stearns did an incredible job once again. Didn't give up those key pieces at both a major or minor league / prospect level, and also got the necessary arms and necessary bat to go win it all this year, in my opinion. But again, let me know if you disagree. Let me know if you agree down below. Give me your thoughts. Give me your reasonings. Unfortunately, that's all the time I have for you in this video, and it looks like that is all the time I have trade deadline talk. I got one more video lined up because David Stearns addressed what his thought process was throughout the trade deadline. He listened to questions for 20 minutes from reporters and answered all of them. So we'll go over that press conference, but that'll be it for the trade deadline. And unfortunately, that is it for this video. That's all the time I have for you today. Thank you so much, always, for watching, and let's go Mets.